When did we visit that new park with the kids? Was it just a week ago? Maybe it was a month ago. You know, it was sometime in the last year. Time has become strange, elusive, and mysterious. When I think back on when specific things happened, I am left confused and disoriented. Maybe you can relate. Over these years of the pandemic, I have appreciated the Jewish calendar anchoring me as I drifted in a sea of quarantine and isolation. Our Torah portion this week, Mishpatim, from the book of Exodus, enlightens us about sacred time. The Israelites are given a law code, civil and criminal laws, as well as laws about the times in our calendar that remind us of our covenant with God. We learn to let our fields lie fallow in the 7th year. We learn that we should rest on the 7th day, which is why we are here celebrating Shabbat together tonight. We learn that our festivals of Passover, Sukkot, and Shavuot should fall at specific times during the year. We might call these set times Mishpatim times. They fall at the same time in our Hebrew calendar every year. Shabbat comes like clockwork as the sun sets each Friday. Each of these set times is paired with rituals and blessings, specific foods and melodies to help us mark these holy days in meaningful ways, to help us build memories. There is another kind of time in our lives, a more nebulous time that cannot be predicted. I'm reminded of these words from Ecclesiastes. Lakol zman veit lechol chayfetz tachat hashamayim. A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven. The time that Ecclesiastes mentions here is different from the set times of Mishpatim. Biblical scholar Michael Fox writes about this Ecclesiastes verse. Time here is not a specific moment in time, but rather an occasion or situation that is right for something. A time for laughing is not a specific date, but rather the right circumstances, at a party, say, rather than a funeral. The cycles of our lives are not set on the Mishpatim schedule. They are on Ecclesiastes time, a time that is more mysterious. As we ask on the high holy days, in this year, who will live and who will die? Who by fire, who by water? We hope that the events of our lives happen at the right time. This idea of the right time made me think of the Jewish saying for when we hear that someone is pregnant. Instead of saying mazel tov or congratulations, which is said for something completed, we acknowledge the uncertainty of pregnancy, the chance of loss along the way, by saying bisha'a tovah, which means in good time. Not only is there an acknowledgement of the unknown, but there's also a worry that saying mazel tov would be a kenahara, a bringing of the evil eye, a superstitious worry that something will possibly go wrong. When I think about how we mark time in my own family, the number 9 comes to mind. Many members of my family were born in a year ending in 9. Papa in 1899, Grammy in 1919, Dad in 39, Mom in 49, and me in 79. I could let you do the math, or I could just tell you that I'm turning 43 next week. Because of this strange numerical coincidence of 9s, my Grammy, my mom, and I were each 30 years apart, and all 3 of us born in Boston. Talk about bisha'a tovah. What good timing. But the thing about bisha'a tovah, the good time, doesn't always follow our plans. In fact, I only learned recently that my mother had become pregnant in 1977 before my parents were married. They were not ready for a child at that time, and they decided she would have an abortion. It was not b'sha'at tovah. It was not the right time. She made this decision with the love and support of her family. She hoped there would be a b'sha'at tovah to come. And of course, there was when I was born 2 years later. I always imagined I would become a mother at 30 as well. My baby born in Boston in 2009. Wouldn't that be perfect? But when 2009 came, I was busy getting married. We knew it was not the right time. So I watched as my dreams of contributing to my family's 30-year baby streak came and went. In 2010, my husband David and I moved across the country to become the clergy of the Aspen Jewish congregation, where we stayed for 7 years. Settled in our new home in the mountains, we decided we were ready to have children if we should be so blessed. In Aspen, I was grateful for supportive health care. The 2 female doctors at All Valley Women's Care always made me feel like I was in strong and competent hands. When I became pregnant in 2011, I knew I would feel comfortable with them delivering my baby. I was also grateful to be pregnant alongside my friend, Alyssa. She had 2 older children and was pregnant with her 3rd. Our due dates were 4 months apart, hers in August and mine in December. She connected me with her doula, Peggy. A doula is a trained professional who provides continuous physical, emotional, and informational support to a mother before, during, and shortly after childbirth to help her achieve the healthiest, most satisfying experience possible. When I asked Alyssa why she recommended a doula, she said one main reason was that it was challenging for the father to be, in this case, to see his wife in so much pain, and having a doula there provided constant support when nurses were sometimes in and out. This was particularly helpful in my case when my husband nearly fainted at the mere mention of an epidural. Peggy met with us while I was pregnant, getting to know us as a couple, helping to teach us and guide us in our birth experience. I remember her asking me, "When was the time you felt your strongest?" She was looking to gather information to help me feel strong during labor. Peggy herself was never able to have children, but she had guided hundreds of couples through childbirth. Though she didn't know the phrase b'sha'at tovah, Peggy had witnessed this sense of uncertainty hundreds of times. It was a cold December Shabbat when I began to feel contractions. It was a week before my due date. I had felt a little off all day, but I decided I felt well enough to lead services with my band. When we went downstairs for the oneg, I quickly avoided the crowds and went into the office. Alyssa came with me and helped me figure out my next steps. David and I went home to wait for the contractions to get closer together. Peggy came to our house with words of encouragement and massaged my lower back as I started to feel more and more discomfort. Later that night, it was time to go to the hospital. When we got there, the ward was calm and quiet. It seemed like we were the only ones there. The Aspen Valley Hospital maternity ward is very small. They average 1 birth a day. The ski injury ward is another matter. We received the caring attention of the nurses and doctors who helped us along the way. Peggy stayed with us as I labored, and once baby Levi was born, we were moved to the corner room with a queen-size hospital bed. I know how lucky I am. When we were there for our second child, B, the only reason we didn't get the corner room was because our friends had given birth to twins just a day before. I guess they deserved it. Having our children in Aspen in 2011 and 2014 felt like the good time they speak of when they say b'sha'at tovah. When I think back to the warmth and support of my own private maternity ward, it felt like the perfect time. This weekend is Repro Shabbat, a Shabbat when the National Council of Jewish Women has encouraged congregations all over the country to wrestle with questions of reproductive freedom. To me, reproductive freedom means being able to find B'Sha'a Tovah, that good time. It is about having access to health care, to practitioners you know you can trust, to a support system for both parents. It's about having insurance and enough money to pay for the expenses that come with having a child. It is about access to education. It is about knowing you have childcare you can count on and afford. Doesn't everyone deserve B'Sha'a Tovah? We walk through this life with dreams and plans, and we recognize that so much is uncertain and out of our control. Ecclesiastes continues, a time for birth, a time for death, a time to plant and a time to uproot the planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear and a time to build. Our Jewish calendar is fixed to help us make sense of the swirling chaos around us. When it comes to our life cycle events like birth and death, we pray that these come at a good time. We hope to live long, healthy lives. When someone dies young, we often say they died before their time. My friend Alyssa's baby boy, Max, was born 4 months before my son, Levi. When Max was 17 months old, he died suddenly in his sleep from unexplained causes. This was not the motherhood Alyssa imagined. Even then, Jewish tradition set times, a time for burial and funeral, a time for Shiva, a time for community embrace in the darkest of times. We established a weekly minyan on Wednesday mornings so that Alyssa and her husband Ben could say Kaddish for a year, surrounded by loving and supportive faces. Our lives are marked by the fixed Mishpatim times of our Jewish calendar and the more mysterious Ecclesiastes times that fall in between, the cycles of our lives that are not fixed, that we hope come B'Sha'a Tovah, at a good time. Let B'Sha'a Tovah be a pathway into acknowledging the sacredness of the time surrounding pregnancy, the fullness of the human emotions that go with it, the joy, the pain, the anxiety, the longing. May we find strength and connections to family and to our community in the fixed times of our calendar. May we find comfort in the rituals that help us in the times that are out of our control. May everyone have access to a B'Sha'a Tovah. Shabbat Shalom.